Bridget Lucas from Wiltshire has been campaigning for tighter rules for young drivers since her son died while being driven by an 18-year-old friend in 2022. She says new drivers under the age of 21 should not be allowed passengers of a similar age for the first 6 months after passing their tests. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that one. The government says it is not considering changing the rules, as that would simply penalise responsible young drivers. But Bridget says that this means that they will then have blood on their hands. I'll go to you first on this one, Sarah. Your children are a bit too young to be driving yet, but it won't be long before their friends start passing their tests.
Absolutely. I think it's a really difficult one because this is a grieving mother, and I can't begin to imagine the pain that she must be feeling, and knowing that she doesn't want any other parent ever to go through that again. However, often these hopefully things don't happen, and that doesn't take away from her grief and her son's death. What I think we should all really do is be responsible ourselves. So before my children get into a car with a newly qualified driver, I'm going to be speaking to the young person, speaking to their parents, and making sure that my children know if somebody wants to drive them around and they're under the influence of drugs or alcohol, that they call me and I will drive anywhere in the country to fetch them, that they're not to do that. And it's about the responsibility starting with us, and also maybe parental consent both ways.
Well, you say...
So you speak to the driver's parents, or they speak to you, and there is a consent amongst the parents. Yes, it's okay for Hunter to go with John.
Yes, I mean, William, I've obviously, you have, I'm sure, and I have lived through this, where this jolly 17-year-old comes bowling up, obviously in their mum's car, to pick up my precious daughters. And they're ebullient. They've just passed their test. You know, the highway is their oyster. They can't, whatever, that's a mixed metaphor, but you know what I mean? Yeah. They can't wait to hit the road. My girls can wait to get in the car because the freedom of having someone of your own age drive you around, what could be finer? And inside, you're just thinking, oh my gosh, and also remembering yourself when you were a new driver, how rubbish you were, and just thinking, God, these are the most precious people in my entire universe, getting in this damn Ford Cortina with this 17-year-old. Oh, no. But how do you stop it? Because they are legally allowed to drive. What do you think?
You've said it on so, Sarah, really. I'm afraid that, you know, in the light of tragedy, you have to be very careful to make sensible law. And I think sometimes when, you know, if laws are passed as sort of knee-jerks to tragedy, that they often end up flailing. I think that as long as, you know, the tests are rigorous, and I think they're much more rigorous now than they were, you know, when I was taking my test years ago. I mean, the highway code, it's also incredibly expensive these days to get a test.
And far fewer young people driving at all, for a start.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's, as you say, it's about dialogue. Who is driving my kids to where? And there's got to be an absolute rule that driver has not even a sip of alcohol or anything. And it's about reassurance and staying in touch. But I mean, completely, we know that feeling of excitement. You know, your first car, you know, your friends in the back of your car.
And
I mean,
it's amazing.
Literally the most greatest feeling in the
and also,
world.
I think important for the children that are the passengers, the young adults that are the passengers, to feel comfortable saying, you're going too fast, would you mind slowing down? And if you won't slow down, can you pull over and let me out?
It's not cool to drive like a lunatic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Afua, same?
It's a difficult one because for me, I fully understand what she's saying. And I actually, you know, remember when my brother passed his test and he would drive his friends around, and my mum, how much she would worry about it and how much I would worry about it, actually. And so I think, you know, perhaps we should have, for the first 6 months, you get to know the roads, you get to know the car, you get to know what kind of style driver you are before you have passengers that are other young people. But then remember that lots of the time, that one driver may be the one driver in a group of 5 that's a lifeline for them going out and doing things. And you don't want to put restrictions on young people. You want them to have their freedom, but you want them to come home in one piece.
Of course you do. Let's talk to Polly. Now, Polly really is going through this right now. Polly, this is the story of your life at the moment. You're in Greater Manchester.
Hi, yes.
Talk to me. Your son passed his test 2 weeks ago.
He did. So, yeah, he passed his test 2 weeks ago, and obviously I was so pleased for him. But in the back of my mind, I was also like, oh, my God, this is it now. This is the fear. This is the sleepless nights. Yeah. But we've set rules. I bought him the car, you know, we insure it. And the rule is until we are comfortable with how safe he is, he doesn't drive around his friends. It's not going to be a car where he picks up his friends at night and goes boy racing and things like that. He can use it to get to work. He can, go and visit family. He can potter around. But yeah, other than that, we're terrified.
Right. When are you thinking that it will be okay for him to start driving his friends around?
We don't know. He's very confident. But yeah, I think that we might go out with him a few times, see how he is. But, that's the rule, and I think it should be a law. He's 17. He's just a child to us.
So
but we've got to keep him happy.
you would be happy to see that enshrined in law. Let's say, for the first year after passing your test, you can't take any passage. Right, you'd like to see that. All right, Polly, thank you. And so when he goes out, do you give him a lecture each time? Do you say, what do you say?
Just, we just need to, we get it into his head, you're young. Not only are we worried about him getting hurt, he has to know, the implications if he caused a crash, if he was going fast. We do have an app where we can see what speed he's going.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's clever.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've never even heard of that. I've never heard of that. You've got an app where you can see how fast he's driving. Wow. Gosh.
Everybody says we're, overprotective, but I don't care.
That's sensible.
I think that's absolutely remarkable.
Yeah.
And I speak as the daughter of my father, who was one of the very first people in this whole country to get safety belts in the car when they weren't compulsory, because he'd been in the most appalling crash in France, where the implication was that the driver, who was young, I think they were in their very late teens, was driving in a sort of devil-may-care, show-offy kind of way. And there was the most terrible crash, and my father was incredibly badly injured, and he had to spend the better part of a year in hospital, having been airlifted over to this country. So I was the daughter of that man. So the thing about how you don't drive like an imbecile, you don't show off, you don't do that stuff, and the fact that he had these safety belts that other people didn't have yet,
I think it's
really
the
sort
reason,
of jammed itself home to me.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to restrict children from being given, sports cars.
Yeah.
I think that's fine. You should be given a really boring car that plods around.
Yeah.
And I think that's fine, because there's nothing worse than seeing, the offspring of the arrogant rich churning through the streets.
And you don't just see it, you hear it.
Exactly.
There are certainly parts of London, particularly Knightsbridge, Belgravia.
In July.
If people haven't been there and they don't know what we're talking about, these are in the summer months where very, very wealthy, very young people with enormously expensive Bugattis and Ferraris are roaring. Literally, you can hear through the streets at the most ridiculous
like they're
speeds.
coming up behind
Or they're
you.
showing off these stupid mega cars on streets with a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit.
I cycle up to them and look at them contemptuously, but it doesn't seem to make any difference.
I wonder why.
And they're always on double yellows because they don't mind if they get a ticket.
They don't care about the
Don't bother.
exactly.